Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Mount Olive Township Council meeting and workshop for June 25th, 2019. We're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, but when we're done, please remain standing. For everyone knows by now, last week we lost a good friend and a good person, Fred DeToro Jr., who was a huge asset to the town, community. He was a good man who did a lot of good for everyone, and we'd just like to remember him as a moment of silence when we're done with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and he will be missed, that's for sure.
Hold on 1 second. All right, go ahead. Let's have it again.
All right, Michelle, please read the Open Public Meetings Act, please.
According to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been given to the Daily Record. Notice has been posted in Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, and notices were sent to those requesting the same.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda. Here. Mr. Ferrante.
Here.
Mrs. Labow.
Here.
Mr. Mania.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
Mr. Roman.
Here.
Mr. Nacastro.
Here. And before we begin, I'd like to welcome Joseph Kozar, who's at the end over here, going for his Eagle Scout from Troop 156.
Yay.
Okay, first we have 13 resolutions. Do we have anyone? Mr. Roman?
On number 3, Andrew, on the detention basin, do we know when's the last time we had to harvest?
We did it exactly a year ago.
Okay. Is there any other method we can do other than spending these funds every year? Is there a possibility either draining it completely and either putting a different lining or maybe mowing it once it's drained?
You know, it's difficult to say. I wouldn't want to drain it because you don't want any of that species to go down into the water,
lake.
the lake, because it is tied into it. We could start to treat it like we treat Bud Lake with herbicides. But as far as draining and mowing, I haven't looked into that option.
I just say, because if we're doing this yearly, I mean, you're talking in the span of 10 years, we're going to be over $100,000 for a small detention basin.
Yeah, I think once we start to kill it just, with the roots and with the chemicals, we should be able to not have to do it moving forward down the road.
And is that a closed enough environment in that pond where we can maybe introduce some kind of a species that eats weeds?
I could look into that.
You know, because because routinely I come across articles that indicate that they're controlling weed growth with other aquatic life, and if that's a closed enough environment where we don't run the risk of it spreading to other areas, see if maybe we can do a more environmentally friendly method.
I'll talk to our consultant.
Thank you.
Andrew, if you recall, I brought it to your attention
Yes.
last year.
We thought we
Correct.
got it all, but yeah, it came back.
Does anyone else have anything else on
I'm good.
resolution?
Nope.
We have 2 ordinances for first reading. Does anyone have any questions or comments on those? We have 1 ordinance for second reading. Does anyone have anything on that? Do we have any old business? Do we have any new business? Does anyone from the public wish to be heard at this time? Seeing none, close to the public. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I will open up the Mount Olive Township Council meeting for June 25th, 2019. Michelle, please read the Open Public Meetings Act, please.
According to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been given to the Daily Record. Notice has been posted in the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, and notices were sent to those requesting the same.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda. Here. Mr. Ferrante.
Here.
Mrs. Labow.
Here.
Mr. Mania.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
Mr. Roman.
Here.
Mr. Nacastro.
Here. Mr. Amianda, would you please approve the minutes from the June 11, 2019 workshop and public meeting, please?
Yes, Mr. President.
I make a motion for approval of minutes of previous meetings on June 11, 2019, work session and public meeting.
Second.
Anyone for discussion? Anyone from the public? Close to the public. Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yeah, here.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Labow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes, we have 15 pieces of correspondence. Does anyone have any questions on those? Seeing none, I open the hearing to the public on ordinance number 12-2019, an ordinance of the Township of Mount Olive in the County of Morris in the State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 367 Towing of the Township Code to clarify towing rates and protections of Predatory Towing Prevention Act. Mr. Ferrante.
Chair, I move for adoption and final passage ordinance number 12-2019. Second.
Does anyone from the public wish to be heard on this? Seeing none, close to the public. Does anyone from council have any questions, comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Labow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
I'm sorry, I'm going off the wrong one. Yes, I can find my other sheet. Ordinance number, I lost the number already. 12-2019 is passed on second reading, and I hereby direct the clerk to forward a copy of the same to the mayor and publish notice of adoption as required by law. Next item on the agenda for first reading is ordinance number 13-2019, ordinance amending section 312 of, I guess that's 1, 2, of bond ordinance number 6-2019 of the Township of Mount Olive in the County of Morris, New Jersey, finally adopted on March 5th, 2019, in order to add an additional project. Mrs. Labow.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that ordinance number 13-2019 be introduced by title and passed on first reading, and that a meeting be held on July 9th, 2019 at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, for a public hearing, consideration of second reading, and passage of said ordinance, and that the clerk be directed to publish, post, and make available said ordinance in accordance with the requirements of the law.
I second it.
Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none, close to the public. Anyone from council? Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Labow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. Next item on the agenda is ordinance number 14-2019, an ordinance of the Township of Mount Olive, amending ordinance number 34-18, which established salaries for the mayor.
Council President, if I could just add to that, there's a typo on the ordinance. It should say mayor,
And
Yes.
council, department head, supervisory personnel, and employees of the township clerk's
I was
office.
wondering.
I was
So-
just going to say.
There you go. I knew something
Thank
was
you.
missing there. Thank you for that correction. Mr. Mania.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that ordinance number 14-2019 be introduced by title and passed on first reading, and that a meeting will be held on July 9, 2019 at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, for a public hearing, consideration of second reading, and passage of said ordinance, and that the clerk be directed to publish, post, and make available said ordinance in accordance with the requirements of the law.
Second.
Thank you. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none, close to the public. Anyone from council? Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Labow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. We have 13 consent resolutions. Anyone wish to move any to non-consent? Seeing none, Mr. Stewart, would you move consent resolutions 1 through 13, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to move for adoption and final passage, consent resolutions 1 through 13.
Second?
Does anyone from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none, close to the public. Anyone from council? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Labow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. Mr. Roman, would you please move the bill list?
I move for approval and adoption of bill list.
Second.
Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none, close to the public. Anyone from council? Let's roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Labow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Abstain on check 84980, and yes to all others. Administrative reports.
Nothing to report.
Any old business from anyone? Ms. Leba?
I just want to thank Andrew, our business administrator, for checking out the situation with the blinking light at Sand Shore and Smithtown Road. I don't know if everybody saw the memo. Our traffic officer said that we're going to try warning signs coming up instead of spending the money on the light.
Well, he had several recommendations.
Right.
Our administration still recommends putting in the blinking light.
Oh, should we vote on that? How do you guys feel?
This is for the
Oh,
blinking
for the-
yellow
You can
and
take a
and red
consensus.
light at the, at Sand Shore and Smithtown, which we put into the budget.
One of the things that Mike Pokwa had said was that, you know, for the country area to have a blinking light, and then, of course, the continued cost of maintaining it and everything else, and the situation has gotten much better. Oh, here
Yeah,
comes-
I was in favor of that until I saw like the signs. I didn't have a problem with the signs as I emailed back, as you saw.
Yeah.
If we can do the blinking type signs that flash at night, because to me, it's nighttime is a bigger issue as
I
well.
think that they reflect,
You know,
anyway,
but
with the headlights.
somehow to make them, if you're gonna use signs, they need to be seen.
Yeah, let me just add a little bit to that.
Sure.
If you notice the top of Smithtown, we've got huge stop signs up there, and they are,
Yeah.
it's mandatory they're reflective. They
Right.
don't have the lights on them, but they're larger than your standard signs because of the issues we'd had there in the past. I know a four-way stop came up the conversation,
That
but
was,
with traffic and then school traffic up there, I think that would cause a major problem.
Mm.
I was up there the other morning, and it was a foggy morning, and at that point, any signage you're going to put up there is just non-functional. You just can't see it. I've seen a lot of accidents at that road. The light that Andrew has had us look at is not going to look horrible up there. It's going to be a black post, and it's just going to be a single light each direction. If any intersection in this town warrants a blinking light, it's that one.
Yeah.
There's been lots of issues there. One of the worst parts of it is if coming to Sand Shore going westbound, you have the bend with the slight knoll of it as you're heading to that intersection. And that makes it difficult to see cars crossing or cars coming Smithtown seeing you coming. With this blinking light, there's going to be a lower light on the post, so when you're at that bad section, you're going to be able to see that there is a dangerous intersection ahead. So I think that all needs to be taken into account. Signage is great, but it's only functional for a certain level. And there is adequate signage on both those intersections.
And to Tim's point, Sunday afternoon, I watched a van come flying up Smithtown and ran the stoplight.
Absolutely.
Right in front of me. If I
And-
wasn't watching them, I would have been broadsided.
Yeah, we just trimmed all the hedges up there. I mean, those signs are huge. We can't get bigger signs than we have there.
And those signs are immense.
Yes, yes. And I'm not one for lights and signs all over the place, but I lean towards a light at that intersection of
I
the.
think we approved that. Didn't we?
It was
Yeah, we
approved in
did.
the budget,
It was approved in the
yeah.
budget
Yeah,
And
it was
we overestimated what was approved in the
'Cause I
capital
saw- yeah.
budget. We reached out to the vendor, and they came in way under,
Right.
so
When would that be going in if we are,
I'm not sure what the time
I could have
was.
it in within a month.
oh, okay.
We've had them up here already. They looked and checked everything out, gave us a price if we were interested, so that's kind of where we're at this point.
And how much of a maintenance is there on it? It's not that much.
Basically, we're going with solar, so there's not even
Oh.
electrical hookup.
Okay.
It's just basically maintenance free. The only thing you gotta change would be the LED bulbs from time to
Time to
time.
time.
Which the LEDs last a very long time
Yeah.
compared to the old standard bulbs, so very little of any maintenance.
That's good. Okay. Anything else from anyone? Thanks for explaining
you.
that all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other old business? Seeing none, any new business? Seeing none, any legal matters?
Just one item, I just wanted to let everyone know that regarding the Toys R Us tax appeal, we were successful in that, and that's going to bring an additional $140,000 to the township. So that's good news.
Very nice.
Nice.
That's a
Thank
good
you.
legal report. Thank you. Council reports. Mr. Amianda, anything on Board of Ed or seniors?
No report.
Thank you. Mr. Ferrante, anything on environmental, lake, or library?
Nothing today.
Mr. Stewart, anything on economic development or community action panel?
EDC, our meeting is tomorrow evening, and concerning the Community Action Panel, that's actually Thursday morning, and planning the evening event for the fall.
Thank you. Mrs. Laybow, anything on open space, Board of Health, or stigma?
Board of Health, we met last week, and we had a presentation by a lady talking more about the vaping and the Juuls and all this other stuff. It was very interesting. And they said what they're finding is that sometimes parents don't understand that those Juuls actually have nicotine in them. And they'll actually buy them for their kids. So and then we carried that information over earlier today for the MOMAC and Stigma Free, meaning we want to get the word out more so that, be aware, you have to understand it's just because it's a fruity smelling vape thing doesn't mean that it's not dangerous or, addictive to a degree. So that was, for that, we were talking about that. And we're also going to be looking, the other thing that they're talking about, or Board of Health we're looking into, is some of the stores, like some of the communities are having ordinances where you have to actually be a cigarette shop or liquor store to be able to actually sell the juice and all this other stuff. You can't just sell it on the counter at 7-Eleven or a Quick Check or anything. You have to actually have different licenses. So we're looking into doing that all through the Board of Health. Open space. Did we do anything open space? No, that was last meeting.
Thank you.
There we go.
Mr. Maney, anything on legislative or planning?
Planning, we had a meeting last week. We had 3 development matters, and 2 were carried to August 15th, and 1 was carried to September 12th. And we also approved the Wawa, and we're waiting for a report from the state for 206 and a report from the county. But it's been approved by the planning board.
Thank you. Mr. Roman, anything on recreation or pride?
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Anyone from the public wish to be heard at this time? If you do, could you just please go up to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please?
Good evening, Councilman. My name is Tiffany Testa. I reside at 10 Brendan Drive in Flanders. I have my neighbors here as well.
I'm Jerry Sullivan. I'm at 12 Brendan Drive.
And Maggie Bagley at 14.
I moved into my property in July of 2015. At that time, there was a portion of the land between my property and 12 Brendan Drive that looked to be slightly sunken in. Over the course of the last several years, that area has become treacherous. It is now to the point of almost becoming a sinkhole. It's a danger not only to the property owners, but to people coming on our property for landscaping, trick-or-treaters at Halloween. I'll let Jerry speak to this, but I know she did a little digging on what was causing this severe decline in the property over the last several years. And I know she spoke with Tim Quinn, and there was an issue with the pipe. And she can fill you in on what happened, but we're here to follow up on if this is being addressed and what the town's recourse for this issue is.
It's between 10 and 12 and between 12 and 14 the property is deteriorating. I was here in December to discuss the issue, and I brought pictures and showed Tim the pictures. Someone came out the next day. To backtrack, our road was spray painted 2 summers ago. They were going to come out and fix the road, and then it wasn't. And then when I came in December, they said that they had bought the piping and the materials to fix what's going on underneath. There was a man from the town, I believe, that said that the pipes underneath the road are mismatched, and you can actually look down the drain pipes and you can see the cracks. So the water that's not going down the drain pipes is literally pouring onto our properties. And then the next day after I was here, Maggie's husband spoke with the person who came out to determine what was going on underneath the road. And did you want to say what he had?
Yeah, he pretty much walked him up and down the street, and they would look down in the drain pipes, and there's a lot of cracks, and there's also PVC pipes that are, if the drain's pointing this way, the PVC pipes are pointing towards the yard. So if you can only imagine, it could be like a fire hose when we're on the downside of the development, so there's a lot of water flowing. So, as Jerry said, all of our properties have been deteriorating and sinking, and it's been going on for several years now. I'm a resident for 30 years, and I'm a pretty patient person, but it's gotten to the point where something seriously needs to be done, and it's probably needs to be addressed underneath, not just pave on top, because the top is also crumbling. But I believe my husband spoke to somebody that had looked down in with a camera or something, and they determined there was cracks and things that need to be repaired, but nothing's been done. So we're, like I said, we're all kind of here just to see what's going on as a follow-up to see where we stand.
And Tim is on his way up.
Yes, there is work that does have to be done up there. They are correct. I was planning on cameraing the pipe again. I know you all said it was already cambered, but I haven't seen it for myself, and that was planned for last week. But because of the rain, I couldn't get the camera down there, so now we're off to this week. The weather dictates to what I can get done, and a lot of times my schedule does get pushed back. That's why I don't normally give out solid days where I'm going to be somewhere, and I did hope to get there last week. As for the sinkholes, what you're going to find there is, I've seen it up in that area. This is the second phase of the Bennington development. This was built after the first phase went bankrupt, and so a new builder came in. Mr. Maney probably remembers all this. And the area where these homes are built wasn't the farmland area. This is all wooded land. And trees were cleared and stumps were cleared. And in my digging up in your neighborhood, in the roadways, and what I found is a lot of rotting vegetation that the builder just bulldozed over. And many years later, it starts to actually decay and rot down, and that's what's causing the sinkholes. I don't believe that the sinkholes are being caused by the storm drain or the gaps in the pipe. Many of the pipes are made to have a certain level of gaps in them, plus the soil over there is a clay and rock. The sinkholes, I'm 99% sure, are not being caused by that pipe. I guarantee that if we did some excavating on the private properties, you would see that there's some timber in there, some stumps, some roots.
Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Maggie,
Welcome.
Yeah, just come back up. Thanks.
Sorry, Maggie, she's an original owner, and they were there when the houses were being built,
Mm-hmm.
and her husband said that that's not true. They didn't just put trees in as landfill, and that's what we're seeing is decomposing.
Well, I've dug up there, and I pulled out trees, and I pulled out stumps in some properties a little further up from yours. So I've seen it, and
Can you determine which property?
You have to
just come up
go
to the microphone if you want to say something. Yep, thank you.
Can you just explain which properties you were digging around? so
we
can
did some work.
understand?
We did some work over, I'll call it north of Deborah Court. There were two houses over there that had something in the backyards that had to be excavated out and had to be filled in. And I believe there was another one right around Deborah Court, and we also dug in the road and found stumps in the road. So I know they're there, and I saw the sinkholes at your properties. And I would almost guarantee that if you excavate it down, you're going to find some wood down there. I don't believe it's coming from the pipe, but I still have to get the camera down there and really see what's going on first. I could be wrong, but we are planning on moving forward with that. Administration and council gave us capital money this year for drainage improvements. So we do have funding this year, which we didn't have last year. And we're going to try to keep a timeline onto at least the drainage part of it for this year. Last year I didn't have the funding, so it didn't get done last year. So this year we talked about it in our budget hearings, and they gave us money to explore things like this and try to figure out what's going on. There are separations in the pipe. They can most likely be sealed, but we're going to get into it and see exactly what's going on.
Will the use of the camera, when you go down there, will that be able to tell whether or not there's a correlation between the piping and the rapid declining and deterioration of the actual sinkhole?
Yeah, I want to get down there with the camera, and I want to see the size of the gaps and exactly where the water's going. I don't believe the water has a major effect to it. I do believe water does aggravate it. A lot of that would be surface water, and once you start to get a surface cavity, it's going to obviously collect more water than normal. And that's pretty much what I'm leaning with in this situation. And as I said, I could be wrong, but we'll find out.
Mr. Rowan,
In
did you have
December,
something?
you had said that in December, you had said that you already bought the material to replace the piping, but you ran out of funding to actually do it.
Right.
Do you
We-
still have
we-
that
we have-
delegated for our?
We still have all the material, and I have monies this year to continue. So we are going to be getting up there. Like I said, I had several drainage jobs we had to get done first. One was the time-limited community development project, which I had to have done by the end of June. I've got one more smaller project that we're gonna knock off in 2 days over on Woodland and Second Street. And then we're gonna be heading up in your area and see what's going on. I should have the camera up there this week, because I wanna see exactly what's going on underground.
Andrew, is there, and Tim, is there any possibility that we can have our engineering firm go out there and give us a report, just to make the residents feel that we have an external third party that is kind of giving a report as to what is causing their current.
Are you going to go so far as to do excavation on private property?
Well, first off, I think if we can get our engineering, our engineers to at least come up with a preliminary idea of what would be needed in order to determine exactly what is needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll talk to our engineering company and we'll sit down with Tim and brainstorm a little bit more, and then we'll figure out a game plan. But like Tim said, getting the camera there and seeing exactly what's going on with the pipes is step one, and then from there we can see what work needs to be done.
Ms. Leba?
Thank you. Tim, I just want a clarification. So they have sinkholes now on their property, so when you're going to do the work you're talking about the piping, are you talking about filling in their property as well?
No, basically, I don't do work on private property. What I want to determine is what the cause is.
Well, that's
Whether the town steps in and does something, or whether they have to do something. If I'm right, then it's going to be something that's going to have to be dug out and then refilled. Depending on how deep it is, it's a lengthy project. I am to determine what's going on with the pipe underground, make sure the water is going where it needs to be, make sure any large gaps or separations are repaired, and that's my part of this. Then we go to part B, which is their major part, and at the same time period, we're going to figure out what's causing the sinkholes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
There was also, they said we have Belgian block on our curb, and they said it's an expense that if they take the pipe out, it was placed underneath the Belgian block, not towards the, side of it. That's an expense that you didn't count for. So if you have to dig up and fix the piping, you'll replace the Belgian block and make the road look like it should look.
Yeah, one of the suggestions was that we were going to remove the entire line of pipe all the way up and down the road. We're not going to do that. There's not a need for that. There is going to be sections where we are going to have to excavate, and with that, the curbing will be replaced. We'll bring an outside contractor in to do Belgian block curbing, because I do it roughly, but we'd rather have somebody in who knows what they're doing with that, and that's also included in the capital funds that we have. So we should be able to take care of the whole problem, hopefully.
I will say, you should probably look as far as up as 18, Brendan, because that's kind of where there's a drain with a pipe pointing into their property, and it downslopes towards our property through
Right.
16, and then us at 14. And we have noticed water coming literally
It's a
out
stream of water.
underneath the ground from Jerry's property, from my property to Jerry's property. So it's not really all just surface. There certainly is surface water.
surface, yes.
But this water is coming literally from under
Yeah, I'd
the
like to see,
ground.
I'd like to see. You'll have to show me where that's coming from. I'm shooting the whole road.
Mhm.
I'm gonna start at the top, and I'm going all the way down, all the way past Deborah, as far as I can go with that whole road, because I've got issues on David also. I mean, you come down David, you can see that at one point there was a sinkhole there also.
Mhm.
And now we pull tree stumps out of it. So it's like just that whole area, so I wanna shoot everything.
Right.
Because if I'm gonna come in there and pave that next year, or whenever we're going to pave it, I'm not
wanna
promising
do
that's
it
going to
again.
happen. I don't want things to settle down on us.
Do you have sump pumps that are tied into the drainage?
I have a sump pump, and in the 20 years I've lived there, it's only been
We've
used
never
twice.
had water problem in our basement.
Yeah,
And yours
but
would
you see it
most likely
pouring
go out.
down between the houses, you see it.
Your sub pump would go out back though, because you're
It
down.
pumps out back, yeah.
They're down a steep incline, so the pump wouldn't be going up to the drains.
We also had to install a $6,000 industrial drain in our yard to collect some of this water and push it out back. Because we have a built-in pool, and we ended up with literally mud, everything going into the pool. So we've had to incur that expense.
I did call the town once because I thought it was a water main break that happened between our houses. because it was pouring down, it was ice cold water. I guess they did a litmus test or something and said it wasn't water, it was. No, this was like 3 years ago, the water main break was last summer.
Right.
Yeah, no, this was 3 years ago. But
Okay.
yeah, it was just, they said it was water coming from, I don't know where, but it was just pouring down. And
We'll investigate.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
Plan
get-
on it. We'll get the Van Cleef involved with it also, and then we'll report back to council. And obviously, we'll keep in touch with the residents to let them know what we find and what we're doing.
Yeah, that's the important thing, just update the residents and will let us know what's going on as well.
Absolutely.
So are you still doing the engineer, the third-party engineer?
Yes.
Are they still coming out?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Yep, we will,
If we could possibly get a heads up for that, because my husband would like to be there to, meet the person and maybe show him something they're not looking at or whatever, just,
fine.
Just leave your contact information with Tim and we'll coordinate.
Okay.
You know already, Tim?
Yeah, I got their emails.
Okay.
If I communicate with one of you, you'll all be together, or can we do it that way, or?
That's fine.
That's
Okay.
fine.
Thank you very much.
Or I'll come to your
Thank you.
house.
thank you for bringing it
you.
up, thank you, appreciate it. Does anyone else from the public wish to be heard at this time? Seeing none, close to the public. Do we have any council comments? Mr. Amianda?
None.
Mr. Ferrante?
I just want to extend my condolences to the Toro family again.
Mrs. Lebow?
Yes, I also want to extend my condolences to the Toro family. It's we lost Fred Sr. November 10th, and now we lost Fred Jr., and it's a very sad time, and wishing the best for the family and everybody in the healing process.
Mr. Mania?
Ditto.
Mr. Stewart?
The only thing I would like to add is I highly recommend people see the video that was shared from the mayor as well as from HTV Media. They did a great job on that for a tribute.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's very good.
Thank you. Mr. Roman?
I too would like to once again pass along my condolences to the Toro family. And pretty much every one of us here knew Fred. Some of us knew the Toro family more extensively. And it is, for those of us that didn't know them as well, it was to see the service and to see the outpouring of the community coming out. I was mostly moved by the last call that came out through the pager. And it just reminded me how all our volunteers give up their time and give up their time with their family so that they can protect us. And it's amazing the type of residents that we have here in Mount Olive that just gives so much. Thank you.
Yes, and the same here. Fred will be missed, that's for sure, but not forgotten. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Oh, second, Kelly. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.